Welcome to More Than a Few Words Marketing Conversation. This is your host, Lorraine Ball. Today, we're going to talk about lying. Well, not really lying, but not lying. And the fact that when people come to your website, they do a lot of things, but they don't lie to your search bar. What does that mean? And what does that mean for you? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. And to have this conversation, and you're going to love this because I've enjoyed all of the pre-recording stuff already, is Stephan Bajaio. And Stephan has done so many things, but he is one of the original co-founders of Conductor, one of the world's leading SEO SaaS platforms, where he spent 14 years helping Fortune 500 brands show up online and actually get chosen. And he's done a whole lot more since then. And today he runs Vibe Logic, and he'll get a chance to tell you about that. But I want to get down to it. Stephan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. It's clear you have your 10,000 hours of experience in this. So let's get to it. I'm told I have 10 minutes to give some spicy takes and insight. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's start with the thing that you wrote me that really caught my attention. The idea that people don't lie to your search bar. What do you mean by that? And what does that mean for me as a marketer and a web designer?
I say nobody lies to their search bar. Most people will share things they wouldn't share with their best friend, their spouse, their significant other, their rabbi, you name it. They won't have that conversation, but they will put it into a search bar. Now, that doesn't mean that we're literally looking at what you searched at 2:30 at night, but it does mean we have signals as marketers of that data. The unfortunate part, and I've said this on many a stage across the globe when I'm fortunate enough to speak, which is to say, unfortunately, the worst thing that ever happened to SEO is that the data got trapped in the channel. So what it is, it's a wonderful supply and demand data set that most of the time we are looking at myopically. So you're maybe looking at the terms in which people are expressing, the needs they're expressing, the things they're putting into the search bar. You're just looking at that as like a hammer with a nail saying, I got to rank for this. At least that's how SEO approaches it, right? But that's not really what it is, right? What it is, and especially now, even more so with AI and all the other aspects of what it means to be a brand and how you'll be perceived. And you've been hearing all this stuff, frankly, they're all finally catching up to what we already knew for honestly decades, which is the links, the mentions, the notations, the way, the reviews, everything, it all matters as to how your brand is consumed and frankly, ultimately perceived, right? So those decisions aren't necessarily even made on your website. They're made well before. Unfortunately, that's the supply side of search, and no one really looks at that. The only reason they were looking at that was opportunistically to be the answer and the one and only answer. But let's face it, you're probably not meant to be the one and only answer for every term you'd like to be. So understanding what is the key, and I have a whole thing on that I can get into and wax poetic on it called Web Presence Intelligence, because of course we needed one more acronym in this world. So,
the point that you raised about the fact that you've got all these data points that too often I think marketers are breaking it down to the word. What was the word in the question? And then not breaking it down to what was the question?
Intent. I can't say it enough, right? Intent it's not a keyword anymore. It's topics. Keywords travel in clusters, in groups. You can call them AI prompts. We can call them whatever the heck the newfound thing is. It used to be voice search and everyone's going crazy over that, right? Then it was like Google Plus and it was AMP, and we have to make sure our pages are created in AMP to be mobile friendly. There are so many iterations of this whole thing that I could give you that I do not have the time today to get into, but I could wax poetic and wax hours on this stuff because I've lived it for 20 some odd years. What I will tell you though is one of the most interesting things I see about this is that we've lost ourselves either in our own brand language. I remember back in the day, I'm sitting in Estee Lauder's very posh conference room. Of course, I'm the worst dressed one there. Speaking of dressed, by the way, I just want to make sure everyone knows this. I'm wearing a t-shirt that says, if you're not helping people, you're just selling stuff. So if there's a moral to the story today, That would be it. So keep that in the back of your mind as we get into it. I'm in this posh conference room, uplit makeup everywhere, and I've been working with them for probably 3 years at this point. And they say, well, Stephan, we've decided. And I say, okay, well, what have we decided? We're no longer going to call it makeup. We're going to call it color. I call it color. Hold on. I'm not a consumer of makeup, and I say, forgive me, guys, I'm not a consumer of your product, but how many of you would search in Google color with the intention to find makeup? None of the hands go up. And I go, so why would our consumer? And then, everyone's there's a flurry of activity and people are saying, well, there's a cachet to it and this and that and the other. And I say, okay, how about pre-owned certified? What does that mean to you? And they all say, well, cars. Okay. Do you remember which car? Nobody could identify it. It was actually BMW. BMW put out the term pre-owned certified, and they used to have a 32 checkpoint system to ensure your car wasn't a lemon, as we used to call it. And it was the alternative to calling it a used car because they were a luxury vehicle and they didn't want to be used car salespeople and they didn't want to be associated with used cars. There was a negative connotation they had to avoid. Okay, cool. Except they had to spend millions of dollars on consumerism and advertising in order to change the vernacular, the conversation, the terms that people used in order to make that a reality. So I said to them, are you ready to do that? At which point the conversation changed drastically. And I think we put that one to bed. So as you can imagine, one would be, are you using your own jargon or are you using the terms of the consumer in their terms and on their terms? And then secondarily, are you actually solving the problem? Like, do you actually solve the problem? Or are you just, forgive my French, trying to sell more shit? Because to be honest, I don't know about you guys. I could buy a shovel on Amazon in just about any color I want. Why do I need that? I have no clue. But the reality is, that is the embarrassment of riches we have now come to. And that shovel can be delivered to me in an hour, potentially. So this is where we're at. There's too much choice. There's too much noise. The noise to signal ratio is completely out of whack. And all people want is they want to know the answers to their problems, that they're not alone. Okay. They want the cousin's wedding album, I call it. Y'all who are younger will not recognize this. Lorraine, no offense. You will. I do. So when we were younger and there was no internet, what would happen is you'd go to your cousin about 4 to 5 months after his or her wedding, and they would when you sat on the couch, they plopped a massive leather-bound book in your lap, and you have flipped through it immediately saying, oh, what a nice bride, beautiful bride, and so forth. But the reality was, you know what you were looking for? Lorraine, what were you looking for?
You were looking for a picture of you.
Exactly, you were. You know why? Because not everyone was carrying a phone with them. So a professional photographer taking a photo of you was actually a pretty big deal. And so getting a photo of you that actually looked that good and not looking like, Elaine dancing in Seinfeld, right? Was a good thing. It was great. It was a value prop. So the reality is people look for themselves in the content. They want to feel seen. They want to feel heard. They want to feel like they were there, right? They don't want to look at the bride. No offense. I'm not here for that. I'm here for me, right? There's a selfishness to the web. That's why everyone can act the horrible way they do on it. There's a selfishness to the web, and we have to admit that to ourselves. And that selfishness needs to be fed, right, with the selflessness of providing value before you expect a return. If you throw this and that and the other, I want your money, bop, bop, bop. Why do you think Google has not allowed those things to rank anymore? We're into it. Yeah.
It's totally because customers are sending signals to Google when they land on a page that doesn't answer their question, that doesn't make them feel like they are where they should be. The signal they send to Google is out of here.
I have a perfect example for you. Perfect example of this. Okay. So I was working with I found out they were like a Fortune 25, which I didn't even know the name of this company, by the way, when I just kind of consulted with them. And they're an insurance company, and you can only change insurances, right, when there's a change of life event, or it has to be within the grace period of whatever. On their change of life event page was change of marital status. It was a bullet point. Now, I want you to think about that for 1 second. Change of marital status is kind of a big deal, right? Could be really positive, also could be really negative, right? So what I did is I started looking into what people were searching around when they get divorced when it comes to insurance. Who stays on the insurance? Do my kids stay on the insurance? Does my spouse get to stay on the insurance? What if we're just separated? Do I need to let the insurance company know? What are the ramifications of me not telling the insurance company? What if I want to take my ex off my insurance? What if I want to keep my ex on my insurance after we're divorced? All of these questions and concerns were there. They exist. They're needed. That insurance company's not answering them. Now, when's the last time you searched Google and got 0 results back?
Somebody was answering it.
Someone's answering that question. Someone's formulating that opinion. Someone is making that connection with someone who clearly is going through something emotional, and you've treated it as a bullet point.
Mhm.
So how well do you think that plays in the grand scheme of things? Now, that doesn't mean you have to build a page for every single little multiplier nuance of every little. But if you're not cognizant of that, if you're not doing your homework, if you're not looking at what's behind it, if you're not going deeper, you're missing the purpose of being a marketer. Unless you're just in the business of selling shit.
And then you're crossing your fingers and you're hoping.
Right. But I'm not in that business, and I've never been. And it's not why I would spend an entire career educating massive companies and small businesses as to the fact that, like, you're here to help. So let's do that. And you'll earn that business. You will. But first, you got to put up, right? I don't need another AI generated nonsensical same sea of sameness blah with a M dash slash I've seen it 1,000 times and you stuck an emoji in it and it seems cute, but it's actually just another sign it was AI generated. I don't need it. I do not need it. Google doesn't need it. They won't rank it, by the way. They'll let it rank for a hot second. Then I can show you 1,000 graphs where all the traffic goes away. So it's a fool's errand. People should be really careful about how they use AI in their content production. Even Gemini now is starting to tag even images in ways that are watermarked but are not visible to you as individuals. There will be more and more of this. I predict it. It will be legally necessary in the future to tag this sort of stuff. So be prepared.
That sounds like a conversation for another day because we are totally out of time. 10 minutes plus flies by really fast. And I've enjoyed every second of it. It's been really good content. I'm hoping that my audience is going to want to find out more. And so we're going to have a link to your website. Where should they go?
Sure. So vibelogic.com, that's definitely a place to reach out. But in all fairness, my drug of choice is LinkedIn. So not the easiest name to spell, but Stephan, Stephan Bajaio, Bajaio.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks so much, Lorraine. I really appreciate it. And thanks, guys.
And if you've enjoyed this conversation, if you'd like to find other conversations like this one, look for More Than a Few Words wherever you listen to podcasts. This has been another episode of More Than a Few Words. Thanks for listening.